Welcome to Ed's Not Dead. I'm Robbie Dodd. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Casey Siddons. Hey, Mr.
Hello.
Siddons.
Hey, happy Thursday.
Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. And, of course, Mr. Peter Crable. Hey, Mr. Krabs.
Hey, Dr. Roberge. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. We are the threesome. This is Ed's Not Dead. Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 2 of, I can't believe it, every time I go to the show notes, season 5 of Ed's Not Dead.
Season 5.
Some of our shared folders were created in 2017.
Well,
All right, so
weird.
I made up a total fib the other day because it sounded really good. I said that we were past our 100th show.
Oh no.
Is that it? Total.
No. Well,
we're
Hold
no.
on. Is that
our last one that we just released was number 100 on iTunes.
Okay.
So now,
Okay.
now we've done a couple, where we pulled out interviews that people really liked, or we've
Plus
redone
15 episodes from my podcast.
Yeah, I know. Can't we
that
count
was
them?
on there too. Yeah, we count. I mean, Robbie, we did a lot for that for
I
pandemic.
We did.
mean, I wasn't going to count. I was going to do some counting.
If we added the pandemic pass and some of your spinoffs, would we be over 100?
No, pandemic pass is that 100. It gets us to 100 even. This would technically be 101.
Oh, there you go. So welcome to our 100th show.
It's a big celebration for Ed's Not Dead.
I do think we need to know when the 100th show is, because we need to
celebrate that. Yes.
Yeah, that's a big deal. As always,
My guess is if you take out kind of all of the extra ones that we've kind of put in there over the years in the pandemic past, my guess is this is about 80.
That's about right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems like it should be a little bit more. It feels like. I mean, when did we create these docs, these show notes? 2016? 17.
Yeah, but 20 a season for 4 seasons gets us to 80, and we did not do 20 every season.
This is true. Ed's Not Dead is brought to you by Pulp Education, a full-service educational media company specializing in leadership, instruction, and 21st century school reform. You can find what we're doing on Twitter, of course, at Ed's Not Dead PC, and check out the website, which I did today, fellas, just by chance, edsnotdead.com. All right, we've got a great show tonight. We are guestless, but that's okay, because we are going to delve into 2 very interested and related stories. Arresting parents at school board meetings. That's always a hot take in a winter, right? So we're going to
nothing controversial tonight.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. And then we're also going to delve into how much say parents should have in what's taught in school. But before we do that, I looked at the show notes, and I don't think we do show feedback anymore, do we? I mean,
No, we decided not to share it on the air.
Okay, so it's private, it's confidential.
We tweet about it usually.
Okay, all right, got it. So, what have you boys been up to? How are things? There's no kids screaming in the background, Mr. Krabs?
Not yet, but just give it time and it'll show up.
All right.
I was a little late to the game, but I did watch Squid Game.
Whoa, it's on my list.
My sister's obsessed with it.
It is amazing. I thought it was amazing. It was so good that I was like disappearing to corners of the house and like watching it on my phone, in like 10-minute increments, so that nobody knew what was going on. But I'm not like a binge TV watcher.
Me neither.
Like at all. And I would say this fell into binge watching territory.
Nice.
Is it a Hunger Games kind of thing? That's what somebody compared it to.
Yeah, I'd say there's like elements of that. Yeah.
It's from South Korea.
Yep, South Korea, and basically people that are like desperate and owe a ton of money are offered an opportunity to win, $30 million or whatever the number is by playing these like schoolyard children games, and they're picked off one by one until you have a winner, which that's like the meta story. But I don't know, I like the characters and like the dynamics between the characters, and it was just cool and interesting, and 10 episodes and out, so I highly recommend.
Nice.
All right, I gotta
the
check
rest
it
of the
out.
world.
So you might be a little surprised by this. I recently saw a movie, and I was that I've been wanting to see forever. Well, let me rephrase that. I've wanted them to make a good movie out of this book forever, because this book had a huge impact on me in the 1980s.
Dune.
Dune. I'm a
Ooh.
Duneophile. I saw Dune on Saturday.
David Bowie.
Yeah, David Bowie. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it was
Sting. Sting.
Oh yeah, Sting was in it.
Was it David Bowie?
No, it was Sting. It
Oh.
was Sting, and it was awful. David Lynch directed it.
Is that 84?
Yeah, he of Twin Peaks fame.
Ah,
Um,
I've
Yeah,
never read Dune.
it's. I mean, it
Is
is
it worth it? It's worth it.
Yeah, it is a seminal science fiction novel. In fact, some people say that much of George Lucas's inspiration for Star Wars. I mean, you when you see it, you'll see how much George borrowed from Dune.
Wow.
It's great, and it's one of those stories that the special effects world finally caught up with a story like this, so you can actually make it.
Right.
And the kids love it because it's got Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya in it, and do you guys know who those two people are?
No.
Nope.
Are you kidding me?
I'm a huge fan of Timothy Chalamet.
I know Jason
All right.
Momoa is in it. That's
Jason Momoa. He plays
Jason
Duncan.
Samosa.
Jason Momoa. He plays Duncan Idaho, and he's pretty awesome. He's bad with a sword. Yeah, no, you guys should check it out. You'd like it. So I saw
That's
Dune.
great. I'm
Yeah,
gonna read it.
you should read it. Frank Herbert. I think it was published in 1964.
65. It says here in
65.
my
Okay.
Wikipedia page.
Yeah, and I read it in 1984, so 20 years after it was published. And as a kid, I was like 15 when I read it. It just blew me away. It's such an awesome story.
Nice.
It's an eco tragedy / Messiah story, / very cool sci-fi stuff.
I'm sold.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Krabs.
I have nothing to share about television binging, but
But you have your daughter's birthday's coming up.
that's
What else?
right. That's right.
And
That's right.
and you scheduled a 2-hour birthday party, which you've been told
3 hours.
3
3
4
hours.
It's like 4 hours. at this
So
point.
I just
It's only
wanted
from 1 to
wanted-
8.
I wanted
Yeah.
stated for the record that Mr. Crable and I are probably going to come, but we're only going to stay for 90 minutes.
Okay, so as long as you come for the first 90 minutes, RD, and then Crable, you can come the last 90 minutes, then it'll be like a nice overlap.
Yeah, well, if Ed's not dead represented for the entire party,
That's right,
which
that's right.
is pretty important. I think Frida will.
I
really
think it's
care
essential,
about
really.
that.
I'm still watching Great British Baking Show because it gives me joy. I'm watching Workaholics, which is my favorite show on the entire planet. It's so good. And then the last thing is RG. I know we're going to save take backs and apologies for the end of the episode, but I'm gonna share more at the end of the episode. But I've been doing a lot of thinking about 80s music versus 90s music. And
I sense a take back coming.
there's a take back, and it's coming at the end of the episode. But I wanted to share it now as a little teaser, so we'll share it at the end of the episode.
Okay, that's
There's
good.
a reason
And-
why I'm bringing it up, and I'll talk about it later.
All right, well,
As you're wearing a Stone Temple Pilot shirt.
we,
Yeah, and that's part of the story. That's part of the
okay.
story.
All right,
Yes,
all right.
that's
Well,
part
no
of
more.
the story.
No more.
Okay,
by the way, for the record, I'm a big STP fan. I
love STP.
Yeah, I mean they were
Okay.
like in my wheelhouse, right? When 91, 92, they were that. And is he alive or did he die?
No, Scott Weiland died.
Scott Weiland died. That's what I thought.
But this shirt is from that 2003 tour, number 4. Went with my dad,
Nice.
Wilkes-Barre Arena.
Very nice.
This shirt is what was. I was telling my students that my 6th graders are. I was like, "What year were you born?" They're like, 2010. I was like, "This shirt is 7 years younger or 7 years older than you are," and they're like, "What?"
That just means
That-
you're old.
Yeah, I know.
Who doesn't love Interstate Love Song?
Oh, it's so good.
That is a great jam, right, Mr. Krabs? You like that song?
Yeah.
You can't
Oh.
beat it. Yeah.
I
All right,
heard
so-
some SCP recently on like Sirius, and I was like, man, That's good. That's good.
They had
Yeah,
like
they-
3 solid albums right in a row that were just
Yeah.
rockers.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, my wife, who you all know, she knows her music pretty well.
Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Went to the original Lollapalooza. She was
Oh,
there,
wow.
the first one. She has always said that STP that they are pretenders.
I disagree.
She never has given them any love. So I did want to add one thing before we jump into our first piece. You know how somebody says something, it's a throwaway line and you shouldn't remember it, but the James Taylor sucks comment it stayed with me for like the last 2 weeks, and so I ran it by various people.
Okay. And
no.
what was the consensus?
Because I was thinking that okay, I have to. This could be generational. I mean,
who did you run it by? What are their ages?
Was it
first?
across
they're all,
America?
no, all geezers. I ran it
Okay.
by all geezers. So
Well, let me tell you my first James Taylor experience at the Wolf Trap, where we were all seated. I got to bring my cooler and my snacks and my wine and cheese.
I brought a cooler of Heineken's.
But we had to bring cans.
There was mixed kind of agreement with your bold
Okay.
statement.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean I think we kind of came to the place, and this is not meant to be offensive in any way. I think we kind of came to the place that maybe it is a generational thing, and you all just don't really. I mean, who gets James Taylor now? Who listens to music like James Taylor's music? Then there were a couple comments of that his voice is annoying. There was total disagreement with that he's not a great songwriter.
Oh yeah.
That was, I think we all thought he was a good songwriter.
I agree. Yeah.
But maybe stylistically he doesn't play now with and when you all were growing up.
Folk rock is, or just folk, I guess, not even folk rock.
Yeah, he was
that's
folk.
a genre. That's a genre that's really fallen off the ledge, and I would totally agree that it's just that is not in my wheelhouse at all.
Yeah. All right, so there's the James Taylor segment. Okay, so let's talk about arresting parents at board meetings.
Yeah.
So with our seemingly ever more divided country and partisan politics, culture wars ongoing, culture wars that always seem to seep into public ed. There's been increasingly, according to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, increasingly bad behavior across the nation at board meetings. Could be anything from mask mandates to critical race theory. Those have been two biggies lately, right? And so Merrick Garland apparently put out a memorandum recently that said, and the USA Today took exception with this, said the memorandum lacked any kind of quantitative data, no actual proof of increased violence. One can find evidence in a September 29th letter from the National School Board Association to Biden documenting, quote, heinous actions that could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. But this piece in USA Today goes on to say that no real quantitative evidence or even examples are given for bad behavior. I think we've all read about raucous school board meetings and voices being raised and fights, etc. But now Merrick Garland's memo suggests that law enforcement should be involved, even to the extent of the FBI being involved. What's your take on A, whether this is really happening, and B, whether the law enforcement or government in some form or fashion should crack down on it?
Yeah, it is such an incredibly fine line to walk here, because while the USA Today opinion piece, I think, is correct that there is no like quote unquote quantifiable data to demonstrate bad behavior. Anecdotally, it certainly seems, and this would not come as a surprise to anybody, as you mentioned, in kind of like the hyperpolarization era that we're currently in, that that the behavior has gotten worse. Now, with all that being said, like, school board meetings have always been and should be a place for the public to come in and be able to express their opinions. In a perfect world, they would express them civilly. They would express them without, any whether explicit or implied threats of violence. People are very hot, and I don't excuse any of that. So I don't know. I think it is a fine line. I think you still, even if people disagree with masks, which I disagree with them, they should still be able to come and state their opinion. But at the point where it gets into any sort of harassment or intimidation or threats of violence, 100% they should step in. Law enforcement should step in. And to be clear, this is not, the FBI would not be coming to your house. If you were to show up to a school board meeting and intimidate, threaten, whatever the definition of that is, a school board member, the FBI, from what I understand, would not come to your house. It's coordination and partnership with local law enforcement. So I think like an issuing of a memo that's kind of like, hey, heads up, these things are happening, to be prepared for them, which is how I read the memo, not being versed in legalese. I think that's fine, is to be prepared for it, because otherwise, if you stick your head in the sand and you don't acknowledge the fact that people are really upset and some people may be willing to do crazy things, then basically you're doing nothing until there is an actual act of violence against a school board member, at which point it's too late. So in that sense, I guess I'm okay with a general guideline memo from federal law enforcement that's just like, if you need help or assistance, we are like a large law enforcement body that can help you.
I also think like it's the next step in the quote unquote culture wars and where the politics is now heading, which is schools. And schools have always been controversial in some ways, causing several sides of different stories. But I think we're seeing what we have seen in political parties and town council meetings. Now it's down to schools and school boards, where the vitriol and the poison and the toxic rhetoric is now coming to school boards. And the data is pretty clear that there's either qualitatively, anecdotally, that there are threats of physical violence against board members. And I don't know, it goes back to I keep thinking like it's Facebook's fault. Let's just go back to Facebook. It's Facebook's fault.
The only, since I'm the resident geezer on the show,
I would think you're against it, but go ahead.
Well, I just think we have to fight this, Casey, and I'm not really disagreeing with you, but I just think we have to fight this inclination or this proclivity to think that things are worse than they used to be. I can tell you that there was a period in the 1970s when my father was a higher level school administrator, where school board meetings were just off the hook.
Yeah.
Dwight Eisenhower had to call in federal troops to escort the Little Rock Nine.
They closed down all Virginia schools. Public schools in Virginia were all closed after Brown v. Board.
So this is not new. And contentiousness, bad behavior on the part of parents, even educators, but mostly parents, at board meetings, I think has a long history, and I just wouldn't want to overplay it. I do think sometimes, the other side will then characterize this as the jackbooted left coming in, the government thugs,
squash free speech, and
correct. Right. So, and that, and listen, I could see how that could be perceived, and there could be some truth to that.
Right.
So I just wish cooler heads would prevail. I do think, to your point, Mr. Krabs, school boards are really one of the most important places in our democratic country where people can come and just let loose.
Yep.
About their feelings and what do they care most about in the world, which is
Their kids.
Their children.
Their children. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to see the Biden administration overreach on it and respond too much.
And I like the other arm of this is where did some of this come from? There's like the two main veins. One is, CRT, critical race theory, and this idea that we're teaching critical race theory in schools, which is not true. And then masks and vaccination policies and things like that. So you have the pandemic issues combined with the cultural and race issues, and it's all coming to a head in ways that are, where board members, it says in the article that people are resigning. You have Board of Education members who are resigning, who are quitting, who are afraid for their own physical safety. And you could disagree with ideas. You can disagree without being disagreeable. But I think the amount of toxic rhetoric that has come about from our community, from communities in which we live, is concerning.
Well, and certainly, I don't think it was hyperbolic to say that, social media certainly has played a role in kind of igniting that or fanning the flames even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just, to repeat though, like a caveat in there, it's like people are resigning and some school board members say they fear for their safety. So, take that with a grain of salt, I think a little bit, because if I ran for the Board of Ed and I didn't really know that once a month I had to go before the public and
get flogged,
just get flogged, I'd quit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Irrespective of any like contentious issues, you know what I mean? But to be told like how terrible I am and all the terrible things I'm doing and how much they disagree with me, I mean, that would be hard to sit there and take. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And add in of really fiery whatever, I think that is also that plays it up too. And then again, I think there's some specific clear in this article cited examples of, yes, that is definitively like a threat against you and your safety. But I think a lot of times it's probably very hard to discern what an actual threat is.
Right.
And so for people to say I'm resigning for fear of my safety, is it because you have a group of really pissed off people that really dislike what you're doing, or like did they actually say we're going to hurt you? And how do you kind of suss that out to what's what? So again, just kind of going back to the really fine line between what is acceptable and what is not, and I think in this case, just ensuring that as vehemently as I or we or whoever may disagree, you still need to let people speak.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, if you've ever sat through a board meeting, even on the most boring board topics, which
still fiery people,
public testimony, you would think it was, the most important thing in the world. My dad always had this funnyism when he was later in life. He would watch one of those weird, bizarre cable access channels on Comcast, and he would watch the cable access. I feel old even saying cable access to his local school board meetings. And one night he told me on the phone, he said, the great thing about watching the board meetings is that I can get up and use the bathroom and go to the kitchen, and I can be gone, and I know when I come back it'll still be going on. It's like a never ending show. All right. What's the famous line by Mark Twain about school boards?
Oh boy.
Come on. Somebody has to pull it.
That's a good one.
It's
in the first place, God made idiots, then he made school boards.
I think he said God made idiots. That was for practice.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, yeah. In the first place, God made idiots. This was for practice. Then he made school boards.
What is that quote from? What year?
Who knows?
It's one of. I mean,
But it tells you the deep-seated, history.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's Twain, and who was a greater commenter on American democracy than Twain? So yeah. Anyway, all right. So that leads us to do we need to take a break? Are we taking a break?
We can lead right into the next one if you want.
It's a lot of content.
A lot of pressure. Oh man. Okay. Well, if we're gonna split it up, I have another quote from Mark Twain that I can enlighten you on.
All right. Why don't you do that? Why don't you? I'm going to make Crable really unhappy with his editing responsibilities.
A million musical interludes.
Yes. Okay. Leave us before we go to break. Leave us with the other Twain.
All right. From November 23rd, coming up in a month, 1900. In the first place, God made idiots. This was for practice. Then he made school boards. And then the next quote from the same speech was, every time you stop a school, you will have to build a jail. What you gain at one end, you lose at the other. It's like feeding a dog on his own tail. It won't fatten the dog. I don't even know what that means.
I think I
like school, to prison pipeline. It sounds.
Yeah, it's pretty much. What year was that?
1900.
Wow. There you go. Twain, ahead of his time.
There you go.
All right. All right, folks, don't go away. We will be right back after this short commercial break. Welcome back to Ed's Not Dead. I'm Robbie Dodd. I'm still with my co-hosts, Mr. C.H. Siddons and Mr. Krabs.
We decided not to leave.
We did. Mr. Crable went and put the kids to bed during that commercial break. We hope you enjoyed the commercials. As always, Ed's Not Dead is brought to you by Pulp Education, a full-service educational media company specializing in leadership, instruction, and 21st century school reform. So we are going to pivot. Actually, it's not pivoting. We are going to stay along the same lines. Valerie Strauss, who we occasionally cover in the Washington Post. She has a blog, The Answer Sheet. Imagine a class with 25 kids and all of their parents insist on telling the teacher what to teach. So she starts off by kind of painting that picture of the chaos that might create. So this gets at the heart of, we were talking about parents or attendees at school board meetings behaving badly. Well, why are they at school board meetings? Because they want to voice or they want to have say in their children's education. If you go to a school board meeting, that means that you want to be heard about what your kids are learning or what the schools are doing. Our friend Diane Ravitch, guest on the pod, right? We had Diane on.
That's right.
There's a quote in Strauss's blog. It's absurd for parents to tell teachers what to teach, says Diane Ravitch, an education historian and an advocate for public schools. The result would be chaos, and in most cases would be parents telling teachers to teach the way they were taught decades earlier. It thoroughly discredits the teacher's professionalism and expertise. I can't think of a more effective way to demoralize teachers and drive them out of the classroom. And fellas, this has really come to a head for us, local politics, the gubernatorial race between Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe. Youngkin has capitalized or kind of leveraged a statement that McAuliffe made a few years ago, where he basically said, I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. Youngkin has seized on that to rile parents up about being excluded from having a say in their kids' education. So my question for you, and I know that there's a very fine line in this, but parents vote for school board members. So in a sense, they do have a say through the ballot box, right? And in some school systems, they help hire principals. They sit on interview panels. They can be involved in organizations like the PTA, PTSA. They have say there. How much say should they have in what is actually taught in schools? Where's that line?
Oh, man. Well, can I first say Glenn Youngkin? More like Glenn Oldkin. Am I right? Am I right? Old thinking.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, sorry. When I read Diane Ravitch's quote, I was like, I couldn't agree. I agree 100% wholeheartedly. I think the profession of teaching is already demoralized. It's already being the way that teachers are treated in this country are already being driven out of the classroom. Like they're already treated like non-professionals across the country. So I think if you have the insertion of parents adding every single opinion that they have about every single thing that is taught, I think it's just, it absolutely, and I'm quoting her again, it discredits the teacher's professionalism 100%. Now, the other side to this is, in how do we solicit parent input and feedback on what we do and what we teach? I think that's a different conversation. I think it's a different road than getting emails or having contentious board meetings about what's being taught in school. And I'll stop there for other.
But let me ask you this. How much do teachers really get to decide what they teach already? Is what is taught a teacher decision, or is it a school system decision? So who's really being assaulted here? Is it teachers? Is it principals?
Well, it's the system.
Don't talk over me. Let me finish speaking.
I would say it's the system at large, because
okay,
you're right. I mean, like if you have big school systems, you have probably curriculum development. You have or they're buying curriculum perhaps. But I mean, there are choices that teachers make on a granular level, like what novels they want to teach or what articles they want to bring into the conversation that help, support something that they're talking about in class, some current events, things like that. So there are a lot of teacher choices that I think are being criticized in this realm, and I don't think it's right.
But most states have curriculum standards. And
yes.
most school systems are obligated to align whatever they teach with those standards.
Correct.
So I guess I'm just saying, is it? I'm not trying to say that teachers aren't being targeted, but I'm just wondering if Ravitch is really right that teachers are the ones that are taking it on the chin here. It sounds like to me, school systems as a whole are the ones that are more under assault.
Yeah.
And I think maybe individual schools as well.
Right.
And, by proxy, administrators often are kind of, I think, the ones fielding.
Oh yeah. We're the ones that hear it. Right.
Right. And so going back to our last conversation, and Casey, you brought it up. And Robbie, you asked the question. I mean, I do think parents do have a say. You vote for a school board,
right?
Correct.
And they decide.
Yep,
they purchase the curriculum. They give the A-OK on this, that, or the other. So go to your school board meeting and say that you disagree with X, Y, Z, whatever the case may be, and get somebody elected who aligns with your views. That could, I guess, come across as like a little dismissive. If you're in the minority, let's say, of a specific belief, and your voice is not heard. But I don't know. That's just kind of like the way that democracy works, and different states have different standards, and different states have different points of emphasis. And I don't want to say, well, if you don't like it, move. But there are mechanisms in place to have a say. And maybe I'm doing a little the whiny woe is me, but it's like, well, don't tell your school, tell the school board,
right?
But with that being said, and that's not to say that parents shouldn't express opinions to school. That's not to say that parents shouldn't be in contact if they hear about something and they have questions about it, or even perhaps they disagree with what is being said. For sure, like PTAs, PTSAs, I mean, those are mechanisms by which individual parents can work within the confines of the system to affect any change that they want.
Right.
So, it's sort of like I would encourage anyone who disagrees with what is being taught in their school to go through the system to get what they want.
It's so interesting. Like, I'm thinking back at my own public education experience. My dad was a local councilman for many years. Not a board of ed member, but not once do I ever remember either my mom or my dad saying questioning anything that we were learning about or questioning. I'm sure they had opinions about some of my teachers because it's a small town, so they probably knew a lot of them, but never did they ever think of going to a board meeting, not saying they didn't have the right to, but like of questioning what was being taught in school. And maybe that's where I get part of my opinion from now that I'm an educator as well. But I think, and Robbie, I don't know if you wanted to transition to this part, but there's also a quote in there from Leslie Fenwick, another guest of the pod, friend of the pod.
Yep.
And I think what she was talking about, the parental rights cry, we're seeing echoes of that from after 1954's Brown v. Board decision, and ruled that segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional. And she talked about white parents burning books, pressuring school boards to actually close down schools and to adopt books that, or at least there was a sizable community in that time period that wanted to have more representation. And you have had a lot of pushback from white parents who didn't want that to happen. So, unfortunately, I think we're seeing the pendulum shift or swing back to that.
Well, I was going to make a different point, kind of with the same quote or the same idea that it goes to both sides. You could have one side that there was a quote in there about like sexually explicit books being in the school library, or
right.
More quote unquote like traditional curricular materials or content. But then you also have kind of like the opposite side, like Fenwick talked about, having parents wanting a more inclusive curriculum that was
right.
not kind of like white Euro-centered. So again, it's like the constant push and pull that school boards do and the dance they do to try and like make people happy, or maybe their goal is not to make people happy. It's just to say,
right.
This is what we're doing, so deal with it or whatever.
Right.
But I do think it goes both ways for people wanting a change in one way or the other to include or not include any curricular materials.
Yeah.
I would also argue, I mean, and I said this to our guest last week, that, there's this idea, and I buy into it because I've done it for a career, that, central offices in school systems are composed of what you might refer to in the research as administrative professionals, right? So they've been trained in curriculum, leadership, various kinds of educational professionalized positions.
Right.
And they're just like teachers are certified in a way that professionalizes them.
Mm-hmm.
So to an extent, I do believe that parents should put their trust in those that are in the profession. And also though have to answer to a school board.
Right.
But my larger point is this, and I'm not sure school systems always do a great job in this, is that school systems also have an obligation to explain to parents why it's important to teach certain
Yes.
things. And that sometimes I think that's part of the problem. Is I read lots of pieces where I can see where a school system didn't do a very good job of getting out in front of an issue.
Yep.
and allow, getting the input of parents, explaining really clearly why this is good for kids. And that's, that's on educators to do
Yes.
a better, to do it. You're not going to be able to convince everybody, But just like any organization, you have to have a plan for how you explain why something is important for kids to learn. And I think most reasonable people will at least listen.
Yeah.
And try to understand, even if it goes against their beliefs.
Yeah, that's fair.
And one last point, kind of a side tangent I'd like to make before we move to the quiz.
Side tangent. I think that's redundant.
ST.
It's a detour side tangent.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a bit of a lament, I suppose. And maybe it reflects a little like naivety or is it naivete?
Naivete.
on my part. The schools do get dragged into the push and pull of the quote unquote culture wars, and that schools at their best are a place for all sorts of kids and educators to have a place where they are a community. And whether they're still a community once they leave the building, different question, different idea, but that in the building, I hate to think that there are like outside forces already kind of complicating the work of taking 1,000, 2,000, however many students. And like, as a school administrator, you're trying to make everybody come together and be like, we're together. We're in this together. We're a community. We support each other. And it's just, again, a bit lamenting, woe is me, just to see and read about things that don't do that. And they could spill into the schoolhouse that kind of work against what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I was just going to say that but I mean, there's a part of you guys know I kind of like conflict sometimes. And schools are not closed systems organizationally. And as the country goes through upheaval, and has times of where things are fairly status quo and static. And then we have events like the murder of George Floyd and a racial reckoning in the country that is ongoing and for, the foreseeable future will continue. I mean, schools to a degree should reflect that tumultuous kind of democracy that we live in. I mean, they should be a place of disagreement and discourse on what kids should learn and how they should learn it. That they can't be wrapped in saran wrap and sealed away from the views, the pendulum of the electorate. I mean, that it's an essential part of that. So
but that's precisely what a large group of people want to happen, is to turn schools into saran wrapped environments of traditional curriculum, quote unquote.
Absolutely, on both sides, though. That's not, you can't just say one side wants to do that. Both sides have their pet causes that they'd like to seal ourselves away and be able to do things the way they want to do it.
But I will contend, and I think you make a really great point about this particular topic, is I don't think it's a both sides issue, especially when you think of like opening up to what is our society dealing with? What is our society having to process? The murder of George Floyd is a perfect example of that, and a racial reckoning, and bringing that into our school in terms of letting kids understand race and how it impacts our lives, right? Or opening it up to that thing and what our students are experiencing and seeing in the
Amen.
world, and bringing in LGBTQ concerns into, advisory classes and health education classes and understanding family life and things like that. So like, I think I don't know that I can't say I agree with this, the analogy of saran wrapping with both sides, but I do. I don't know. I don't know if I have a.
But Casey, schools have to be a place where people and kids, we have to model for kids. Not all kids are going to think the same way about things, and they have to be safe spaces for
I totally agree.
Differing opinions.
I totally agree with you, and I believe you said this. I don't know if it was on air, but like, we have to have a space where people can disagree. However, my point of worry comes, like, for example, the LGBTQ discussion. Like, at what point are we going to allow for disagreement about certain things that we're telling people, like about someone's individuality and someone's existence in our society?
Right.
I don't think that there's a space for disagreement for saying, well, I don't think that you're a person, or a disagreement about the pronouns that you prefer because of the gender fluidity that you're experiencing. So like, I think there are some topics and some things that we need to broach in school that are not arguable, that are not up for debate necessarily.
Oh no, there are facts. I agree. And we know that facts have been a problem for a while, based on 2016 forward. No, I'm with you. And in those discussions, that's why if you have those discussions, schools are obligated to create really sound ground rules and structures for kids to be safe.
Yeah.
Where they're not going to be victim of something that is hurtful or devalues them in any way. And you can I think you can do that.
Yeah.
And you're going to have extreme views. And we know that we have to manage those, right?
Yeah.
All right. That was very heavy.
That was heavy.
It is so heavy. I'm so tired.
Tired.
Let's take another commercial break. All right. It is time for a Casey quiz, current events.
All right, you guys ready?
Yep.
All right, Dodd, you get the first one. First set of 3 questions, okay? And then I have some bonus ones.
I think we tied. I think we got 2.5 each because he told me an answer that I wouldn't have gotten.
That's right. That's right.
That was, look at you, Mr. Krabs. Good memory.
Very nice of Dr. Dobbs. All right, number 1 for Dr. Dobbs. The 2021 World Series between the Houston Astros and the blank begins Tuesday night against A, the Los Angeles Dodgers, B, the Atlanta Braves, C, Boston Red Sox, or D, the Brewers.
Are you being very nice to me tonight?
That was
I've noticed that.
Cakewalk.
I mean, yeah, that would be. I don't know the letter. I think it was B, but it would be the Atlanta Braves.
That is correct. Ding. Number 2, a massive storm unleashed by a blank merged with a quote unquote atmospheric river to cause mudslides and flooding in Northern California. Is it A, a flash hurricane, B, a chain tornado, C, a sudden earthquake, or D, a bomb cyclone?
Is that mine or Crable's? You're doing
that
all
would be
three.
Dodds, Dr. Dodds.
Okay, so we're doing 3 straight here.
Correct. Sorry.
Can you read me the first part of the question again? I need the context clues.
Sorry, a massive storm unleashed by a blank merged with an atmospheric river to cause mudslides and flooding in Northern California.
Okay, I've always, I'm a fan of CWG. Little shout out to Capital Weather Gang from the Washington
I love
Post.
C-Dubs.
They are
you a fan of Matthew Capucci?
I love Capucci.
Matthew Capucci.
I first learned about the bomb cyclone from CWG. That's my best guess. Oh,
Correct.
Look at that.
Which may be like the best meteorological term out there.
Crable, has anybody taken that and named a band? I mean, bomb cyclone. That would be a great.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, two out of 3. Here we
Number
go.
3. The UN condemned Israel for naming 6 prominent human rights groups that help the blank as, quote, terrorist organizations. Is it A, Coptic Christians, B, Palestinians, C, Syrian refugees, or D, Ethiopian refugees?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
I sure can.
This could be a trap question.
The UN condemned Israel for naming 6 prominent human rights groups that help the blank as, quote, terrorist organizations. Is it A, Coptic Christians, B, Palestinians?
I'm going to go with Palestinians.
Palestinians is correct for a 3 out of 3 score for Dr. Dodd. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Now, for Mr. Krabs, I made the real hard ones just for you. Number 1, authorities are investigating how a prop gun fired on a movie set by actor blank ended up killing the director of photography and injuring
Baldwin.
without any choices. Correct. Alec Baldwin. Number
Crazy story,
5.
by the way.
It was crazy. I remember listening to it and I was like, what?
and incredibly tragic.
Very sad. Yeah.
Just
It was just horrific.
Yep.
can you name another prominent actor who befell the same fate with the same instance?
Yes, that would be Bruce Lee's son.
That's right.
Was it Brandon Lee?
Yeah,
Brandon Lee, that's right.
Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
From the-
1990.
What's the movie called? The something.
The Crow.
The Crow. That's right.
Which, by the way, was a very anticipated movie before the tragedy struck. It was, because could you check my date on that? 1991.
90. Let's see. The
Maybe.
Crow.
Maybe 89.
All right. The Crow. Not The Crown.
1990.
1994.
Oh, I was too early. Okay. Anyway, yeah. That was
So
that
it was released then, huh?
Yeah, it was weird because they had a fill-in actor
Oh, dear.
who finished the rest of the film. Alec Baldwin, that guy, he's kind of his own worst enemy. I mean,
He's reportedly not a nice guy, but I wouldn't want that to happen to anybody.
Didn't you ever hear that recording of him calling his daughter?
Yes,
That-
not great.
Not
a great moment.
That
Not
was
a great
horrific.
moment.
That was horrific. Anyway,
Right.
all right. Number 2.
All right, number 2, Mr. Graves. A New York City commission agreed to remove a statue of former U.S. President and slave owner blank from City Hall. Is it A, George Washington, B, John Adams, C, Thomas Jefferson, or D, James Madison?
Ooh.
It's like an impossible question.
It's C or D, Crable. They wouldn't remove Washington and Adams.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Jefferson. Everybody.
Jefferson is correct.
Jefferson.
Oh, look at that.
All right. Number 3. The most powerful drug lord in blank, Dairo Antonio Usugo, known as Otoniel, was captured and will be extradited to the U.S. from A, Paraguay, B, Venezuela, C, Colombia, or D, Panama.
Shot in the dark, stereotyping with no context clues. Colombia.
Colombia is correct. We have a tie,
What a guess.
two-way tie.
Oh my
Um,
God.
All right. So, Dr. Dodd, this one's for you. This bonus question. Blank, former chief strategist in the Trump administration, was found in contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena. This is a, you want, I'll give you multiple choice. Three choices.
My hero,
A, Steve
Steve
Bannon.
Bannon.
Correct. Steve Bannon is correct. All right. So Robbie's on top with 4.
He's an awful person.
He's a terrible human being. All right. Bonus for you, Mr. Krabs. Former President Trump announced the launch of his own social media network called Blank Social. A, Trump. B, MAGA. C, Truth. Or D, Reality.
I think it's truth.
Truth is correct.
Hey,
we are on a
come on.
wager tie. Jeez, a
To make these answers harder.
Good Lord. All right. This next one is for Dr. Dodd. A major manhunt ended for Brian Laundrie, the fiance of Gabby Petito, after his remains were found in a blank wildlife refuge. In which state? A, Wyoming, B, Montana, C, Florida, or D, New Jersey?
Where else but Florida?
That's correct. Okay.
Where all
Well,
the crazy stories.
Mr.
come from.
Crable, this is going to be interesting. Make or break for you because this is the last question I have.
You had a lot prepared.
Oh my God. In a medical first, a kidney from which animal was successfully transplanted into a human at a New York City medical
This is
center?
going to be a hard one.
A, pig, B, a baboon, C, chimpanzee, or D, orangutan?
It's orangutan.
Orangutan.
And there's a
There's
G.
no
on-
G. There's no
a
G.
G. Everybody says orangutan.
Orangutan.
I feel like I've heard about pigs in general being good organ donors. So I'm going to say pig.
A
God.
fetal pig.
The pig is correct.
Oh, come on.
So a little Mr. Siddon's classroom secret from back in the day is that when I used to do review games with preferred activity time, I would rig it so both teams won, or like they both tied. So
Nice.
I didn't rig this one, but it worked out.
All right, two ties in a row. Two ties in a row, Mr. Krabs.
That was good.
Yeah.
Good work, fellas.
Those were good questions, Mr. Sids.
I'm glad you liked them.
Yeah, they weren't. I kind of like them when they're not that hard.
All right, for our final segment of the day, gentlemen, Do you want me
is there another?
Do you mind if I lead us into the?
Oh, you're more than welcome to.
All right. Well, do we have any take backs, apologies, or compliments?
Take backs, apologies, or compliments. A new.
While you think of it, I'm going to apologize.
A new segment.
That's right. While you think of it, I'm going to apologize. For years I ragged on Dr. Dobbs for his love of 80s everything, 80s music, 80s cultural stuff, everything 80s. I ragged on him. And, the 90s, I thought 90s had good music and all this other stuff. 90s music is pretty awful, pretty terrible. There's really, it has few redeeming qualities. And the 80s really do rule in terms of a lot of things. And I'm apologizing. It's a long way coming, but I apologize. I take it back and apologize.
That's fantastic of you. The only thing I will disagree with, because I'm in a bit of a tough position here that, I was 25 in 1994, right? So, I mean, I liked grunge. I think the 90s had some good music. I thought the alternative scene really got going. I mean, didn't your favorite band Phish really get going in the 90s?
They did, but I wasn't a Phish fan until I was almost 20.
But there were Phish fans in the 90s.
Oh yes, of course,
sure.
Yeah.
Dave Matthews. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure I could say which one was better, but I'm glad you took back that the 80s were awful. Well, that's where you started.
Blanket statement, yeah.
Well, of course, I'm good at generalizing, but I'm saying like the whole compendium of music from start to finish in the 80s, I think beats the 90s.
Okay.
By and large.
Okay.
All right. I'll take that. That's good.
I would like to compliment both Robbie and Casey. Usually in each show, there's a moment where I start to feel really uncomfortable and wonder if this is going to be the one where like there's some
we quit. One of us quits.
Yeah, irredeemable blowout. So I thought I sensed it coming when Robbie did not like Casey cutting him off.
Oh, he talked over her totally.
Yeah, he cut you off, and I
they did one of these.
I will just speak louder. So Robbie demonstrated, I thought, a great deal of maturity and restraint, which he's not always known for either.
We did start the podcast last time in a heated argument about my quiz. So,
we did.
Which is another recurring theme. So yeah, compliments to both of you for just being professional throughout the show. Thank you.
So good.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. We'll take it. Right, Mr. Sids.
That's right.
By the way, can I just go back to the?
Is this a take back or an apology?
No, the 80s, 90s music thing, but you have a really awesome vintage. And when I say vintage, not Target.
Really vintage.
It's not Target vintage. It's like, it's real vintage STP shirt on, Stone Temple Pilots.
That's right. It's the oldest shirt I own.
So, you know what, Mr. Graves, I'm just so beaten down that I just can't. I'm just happy.
You can't even rise to the bait.
I'm happy to see you too. And Casey, we've had a wonderful show, haven't we, Mr. Smith?
We have.
Yeah, it's been great. All right. I'm having some learning issues with the new segment. I have written on my pad here, take backs and compliments. I can't remember the middle one.
Apologies.
And to be clear, you don't have to have one.
It doesn't have to be about us either. It could be about anything. It could be about anyone or anyone, anywhere.
I'm thinking.
I have a take back from about 15 years ago that I'd like to say.
Man. Okay.
Go for it.
So there was this sandwich shop called Taylor Gourmet, I think is the name of it.
Overrated.
Was that in North Potomac?
I know it was like a local chain in the area.
Yes.
And I went in and ordered a sandwich, and it was, I guess you could say, ahead of its time in terms of being like artisanal sandwiches. So I went in there, and I like my sandwiches with mayo and mustard.
Mhm.
Those are staple for
I
me.
mean, you got to have those. Those are good.
Very important. And I can't remember which they did not even have in the store. And so I went online, and it might be the only Yelp review I've ever done, to be honest. And I blasted them for not having mayo as an option in the store.
I can't believe that you, of all people, did it.
Yeah.
That's something I would do and ask for a refund.
I did that. I did not do that, but I've evolved since then, and I understand that not every sandwich needs to have mayo on it. So I'd like to take back that Yelp review from 2006.
That's fair.
Yeah, and it's okay to have a sandwich without mayo or mustard on it, I guess.
Look at you learning and growing.
That's
Top that.
there were Yelp reviews that long ago.
I think so. Maybe I'm adding more.
Yelp was
time to it.
around.
It was a while.
around.
Yeah.
This is I'm not very good at thinking of these things. This is semi-weak, but it's heartfelt. Mr. Siddons, I sincerely apologize, and tell your bride that I apologize for my hour and a half comment about Frida's birthday. I do feel a little bad about it. No one made fun of me when I had my first child, and I was happy about their birthday party. And I said, "Your birthday party sucks because it's 3 hours." So I take it back. I'm gonna be there from beginning to end.
Oh my goodness!
I just want you to know that, and the Dodds will represent, and it'll be fabulous celebrating Frida's 1 year, 2 years. Can I do a take back?
Another take back.
She's 2.
She's 2.
No, she's not 2.
She's 2.
Okay, the reason is I'm confusing Frida with our friend Greg's daughter.
Oh, I get it.
Who just turned a year.
She's very cute as well.
Yeah. Yes. I
Frida will be very excited to have
Well
you there
done.
because the books that you and Jenny gave us that were Johnny's, I believe, and Nora's. There's 3 books that you gave her. She loved.
I think
them.
I curated those.
Yes.
I think that was because I was the
one is I believe the Very Hungry Python or something like that.
The Very Hungry Python. Yeah, which was written by Eric Carle.
Yes,
Who just died in the
which
last
has passed
year.
away.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh,
who wrote The Very Hungry.
Catamount.
Yep.
She loves that book.
Side note, and then we do have to wrap up the show here, but
Let's just keep going.
On the theme.
God, she's cute.
She is on the theme of Dodd gifts to children and firstborn. So I think for Owen, they give this like really cute like 4 bottles. It said like quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, and it came in this really like nice kind of like metal milk crate carrier. And they sat around and they were nice little mantelpieces or whatever. So Owen has become more interested in money recently.
Oh, is he
So
stashing money in them?
So he discovered that they were full of money, and he took all of them and put them in his bank. And I was like, why is this freaking thing like 20 pounds, dude? I was like, where did you get all these from? And his basic logic was nobody was using it, and I stole it first, so nobody can steal it now from me.
That's great.
That's why it's his.
Well, you actually have to tell him that there's a concept called a fair steal, which is that
I couldn't even broach.
This was a concept that my friends and I trafficked in back in the 80s. That if you stole something from one of your group, and then someone stole it from you, it was a fair steal.
Yeah.
So you could say to Owen, listen, if I steal it from you, then it's fair. I'm sorry.
Told him that. I go, well, if I see you're not using it, I'm just going to steal it back. Just so you know.
Well, I'm glad those
Very
were
mature.
full of money, and then
They were.
he just adopted them.
He adopted them as his own. He did.
That's awesome. All right, so we got to get a gift for Frida's 2nd birthday.
She's a book lover.
Yeah. Anyway, she's adorable. As all 4 of your children are. 4. You guys got 4 kids between the 2 of you.
Yikes.
All right, fellas. As always, Ed's Not Dead is brought to you by Pulp Education, a full-service educational media company specializing in leadership instruction and 21st century school reform. Check out our website at edsnotdead.com. And follow the pod at Ed's Not Dead PC on Twitter. because one of these two guys is tweeting about the pod. Share the pod with your friends. We're getting great traffic online, right? Lots of people are listening.
Yes. Leave feedback.
Right.
Rate us.
I do
review
think
us.
I do think we should do some show feedback next episode.
Yes.
Come on. Show
I'll
feedback's
gather.
fun.
I'll gather. I got it.
All right. Any guests coming up? Future episodes?
We're working on some education beat reporters. In the coming months, we might have Kathy Hoffman on again when she just had a baby. So congratulations to her growing family. We'll try to get her on in the winter at some point. And I have a couple more people in the hopper that I think are going to be really great.
All right. Sounds good. All right, fellas. It's good to see you. Folks, thank you for tuning in to the show. As always, spread the word about Ed's Not Dead. And for Casey and Peter, see you later, fellas. We'll talk to you soon.